Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. So over the last couple months, I've had several requests from viewers and subscribers out there to make a little video on how to use a micrometer. The measurement tool that we machinists use to do all kinds of precision measurements. And you know, as someone who's been doing machine shop work now for 25 years or so, you know, I guess I don't think much about, you may not know how to use a micrometer because it's something that I use on a daily basis. But I do want to just take a few minutes and kind of go over basics on micrometers, because there are many of you out there who don't have that experience and who are just learning and getting into this, or maybe not even having any shop background at all and not having any experience at all using measurement tools. So let's get in here and give you guys a basic training on how to use micrometers. I went through all my machinist drawers and just kind of pulled out a variety of different sizes, shapes, and types of micrometers that I have, that I use in my shop. And as you can see here, there is a wide variety of different types for different sizes of materials that you're measuring, as well as for different functions that you're trying to do. So the most basic type is just your regular micrometer that's used for measuring the distance between two areas. So this will be used a lot on round material, like on a lathe. It can even be used on a milling machine for measuring squares, or just two parallel sides. Anything that you can slip this micrometer over to get a measurement. It's an outside micrometer is basically what this is. They also make micrometers for doing inside measurements, such as this one here. So instead of going around it, you pick it up and it expands and gets smaller when you turn the thimble right here, and you can do an inside measurement. We've got one here. This one here is for doing a depth. So you would lay this across the top of something. This would go down into a hole, and again, turning this in and out, you can make that stem go up and down to measure the depth of a hole or something like that. This is a hub micrometer. It's made for getting into a really small area. So if you have a hole and you're trying to measure the thickness of a hub, you can get this down inside of a small area. It works just like an outside micrometer, but instead of having a big sweeping area that you can get something into, it's for slipping up inside of a hole and measuring. Here's another one. This one is actually for doing sheet metal, where you can actually have a longer, deeper reach to be able to get up in here and measure the thickness of a piece of sheet metal or plate steel or something like that. So micrometers come in a lot of different sizes, a lot of different shapes, and for a lot of different functions. And this is just an example of the few that I have. If you start looking through some of the old catalogs from Starrett and Brown and Sharp and some of the other companies, you will see many types of micrometers that are used for different functions. For today though, we're going to be concentrating on just talking about the outside micrometer caliper. And a lot of what we talk about, again, it will apply to all these that are in here. They're all basically going to work the same way. They're going to be read the same way. So what you see before you here is just a standard outside micrometer, and I just picked one here for us to look at that's easy to pick up and handle. This one particular one measures a range between 6 and 7 inches. Most micrometers will measure a range of about 1 inch in travel, and as you get into larger and larger sizes, you actually have to have multiple micrometers to get those different measurements. They do make some universal ones that you can change these anvils out on the end to be able to have basically one set to do a lot of different sizes. But quite honestly, you really want to have a dedicated micrometer when possible, particularly if it's something you're going to be using a lot. The adjustable ones, you have to spend a little bit of time calibrating them each time you use them, whereas these should stay in calibration pretty well between one use and the other. And when you get ready to measure something that size, you go grab the tool that you need and you get the job done. So first off, let's talk about the parts of a micrometer. There are many parts, and just so that the nomenclature that we're using everybody will understand. So first, you know, this back part here, this is just called the frame of the micrometer, and that's basically what everything is built on. And again, the size of this will depend on the size that you're using. Down here on the bottom end, the bearing surface, this is called the anvil. This part stays stationary, it does not move. And ideally, I will say this, ideally you will have micrometers at these anvils on both sides are made, actually have carbide on them, so they do not wear very much. Many of them are just steel, and if you use them a lot over and over and over again, particularly if you're like doing inspection work or where you're using that micrometer a lot, they will wear over time, and they can go bad on you. So if you have a carbide faced micrometer, it tends to hold up very well. This particular one here is not carbide faced, but we'll put this one in here just for a second. You see the change in color down here. This one is carbide face, and particularly on your smaller ones. This is a 0 to 1 inch. This is probably one of the ones that I use more than any other size, and because of that, I really want carbide on it. The larger ones I don't use as much, so I don't consider the carbide to be as important for me, at least how I'm using them in my shop. So the micrometer is a precision measurement tool, and depending on the type of micrometer that you have, it will be capable of either measuring something down to 1/1000th of an inch, or in some cases to 1/10,000th of an inch. Most are just going to measure to 1/1000th, but you may actually have some that will go to 10,000ths. This particular one we have here measures to 1/1000th of an inch. And you read that down here on this scale, and we're going to talk about exactly how to read that in just a bit. But before we get into that, let's talk about how the micrometer actually works. So again, we were talking about the parts with the frame, the anvil. This is the spindle here. This is called the sleeve that has the numbers on it. And then the thimble is up here. This is the part that's going to rotate. And let's zoom you in a little bit closer so you can maybe see exactly what's going on right here. So again, the sleeve stays stationary, the thimble rotates around it. And as you turn this, it's basically got a screw thread in here, and it's going to move this spindle in and out. So most micrometers, actually the way this works is there's actually a thread inside of this. So you got a thread in here, and the thimble has a nut in it, and the thread in there is at a 40 pitch, 40 threads per inch. So you have to turn the spindle 40 times to make it move 1 inch in or out. And so by doing that, so if you do the math, 1/40th of an inch is 25 thousandths, okay? And if you look on here, there are lines in here, and each one of these lines show 25 thousandths. And also if you look on the thimble, it's marked. So we got 0, 24, 25. So when I turn this out, you can see the numbers. Each one of those numbers represents 1/1000th. I come around to my 0 again, and you can see there's another line up underneath there. So each one of these lines represents 25 thousandths. Now to read a micrometer, it requires doing a little bit of math. And some people don't like doing math, but that's what it requires, at least to read this type of micrometer. They do make digital micrometers that'll give you a digital readout. I personally like the mechanical ones, just like this, because the batteries never go dead. They always work. You don't have to worry about where you set your 0 at on it. But right now, when we look at this, the first thing you have to know when you're to read a micrometer is what you're starting out with. So this one measures 6 to 7 inches. So we always know that we're going to be 6 inches plus whatever we get down here. And if you look in here again, each one of the small lines represents 25 thousandths. The large lines that have a number on them, the 1, 2, that's going to be 100 thousandths. So you got 100 thousandths, and then 125. 150, 175, 200 thousandths. Right now, the way this micrometer is reading is we're on 225 thousandths. So if we had something that measured right there, it'd be 6 inches, 225 thousandths. We have to add all this together. So we know the start width is 6 inches. We look on here, the first number here, we're on 2. That's going to be your tenths of an inch. And then you go down here and you look, how many increments are there? We're on the first increment, that's 25, and we're on 0, that's 25. If we rotate this around just to right there, to the 5 mark, so now we're at 6 inches, 200, 25 plus 5, so it'd be 230 thousandths. So again, you have to do some math to add these together. It's not hard math. but it is math you have to do. If you're first getting started with using micrometer, I would recommend that you write these numbers down. It will kind of help you add them up. As you get more and more experience, you will find that you can do this math in your head fairly easily. So again, let's just we'll just kind of pick a random spot on here. You know, here we go. Right now we read this. We're at 300. We got 25. We're at 50. Okay, and then we're at 350 thousandths, and we look on here, we're between the 20 and the 21. So which one do you go with? Well, until you cross the 21, it's going to be 20 thousandths. Now, in this case, it's somewhere in between. But if you're writing down a measurement, this is going to be 370 thousandths is what it's going to read. So 350 plus 20, this will be 370 thousandths. It's quite simple to read a micrometer. And it just takes a little bit of practice. Don't be scared of it. I've swapped out micrometers here, and I've got one that's a little bit different. This one here is a 1 to 2 inch micrometer. And as far as reading to the thousandth of an inch, it reads exactly like the one we just showed you. And I've got it set on the same measurement basically that we had the other one, which is 1.370. The difference though with this micrometer is this micrometer is has a Vernier scale on it that will allow you to read this measurement down to the 10,000th of an inch. So if you look on here, if we rotate this around, you can see this scale across the top here. Let's make sure we get that in focus. There we go. So if you look here, there's a Vernier scale right through here. And what you do, the way you read this is you look at the lines over here, the long lines, and there are numbers out here, and each one of those numbers is a 10,000th of an inch. And what you want to do is you want to find the line that lines up with one of the marks on your thousandths dial. And you're not really paying any attention to what number is over here. You're just trying to find the one that most closely matches and lines up. So let's go back over here and let's put it back about where it was. And we roll this around and we look, and right here, this line lines up with this line, and that is 6 10,000ths of an inch. So in this case, the measurement is going to be 1 inch, 370 thousandths and 6 tenths, or to read it out in decimal, be 1.3706. So to give you another example here, and also to show you a micrometer that reads just a little bit differently on the 10,000ths. This is a Starrett number 221. This is probably my favorite micrometer. This one is a 0 to 1 inch. They only make this model in a 0 to 1 inch, unfortunately. I wish they had it for other sizes as well. But anyway, let's look at it here. So we're measuring in here, and you know, I come in here and we measure that. And I'm going to show you how to write this down so we can add this up. So we start out with the 700, so it's 0.700. We would read there. Okay, we look at the next line. We're past the first line. Excuse me. 0.025 thousandths, okay. And then we read what's on the micrometer, and we're at 21 thousandths. 0.021. So we'll add all that together. So we're at 746 thousandths. Now on this micrometer, to read to the 10 thousandths, what you do is it actually has a little spring-loaded barrel in here, and you just move this over until you line up the mark here with the line, like such, and then you read your 10 thousandths over here on the scale. So, and this is kind of hard to show, but it's right over here. You see which one. So let me get that back on line right there, and we're a little over 1/10,000th, so we're going to call that 1/10,000th. So the actual number here will be 0.7461. So now that you know the basics on how to use a micrometer, one thing that you need to also understand is how to calibrate your micrometer to make sure that you're getting an accurate measurement. They can come out of calibration from time to time, and they're really quite easy to get set so that you're getting a good accurate measurement. So with a 0 to 1 inch micrometer, the way you calibrate it is simple. You just bring it in all the way down into it, dead ends on the anvil and the spindle come together, and they should line right up. And if you look right here, let me make sure these faces are clean. One way that you can clean your faces is just to take a piece of paper, put in between them, bring it down, and just pull the paper out. You don't want to have a whole lot of tension on them. You can see there's a little bit of grime in there. So now let's go back over here, and it's lining up right on 0, just exactly what we want. Okay, so just that little bit of grime on there was actually making it off by several 10,000ths of an inch. But we want the 0 to line up perfectly with the line right there. If it is off a little bit, it's quite easy to fix. When you buy a micrometer, they usually come with a micrometer wrench, like this right here. And if you look on the back of this micrometer, there's a hole. You take this little wrench, you put it into that hole, and I'm not going to actually do it on this one, but you just turn the barrel until you get it lined up exactly right there. You can go either way with it, forward or backwards, and this will actually turn in there, and you get it where it's lined up exactly 0. This micrometer is in good shape. It's ready to go, and that's how you start with a 0 to 1. You just go all the way down to the bottom. So you might ask, well, how does that work if you got a 1 to 2 inch micrometer, because you can't bring it all the way down? So let's take this down to 0. Right there. And notice we got a gap in here. So we've got to put something in there to measure. And again, when you buy a micrometer, if you buy a new micrometer, it usually comes with a standard to check it with. Here's a 0 to 1 inch, or a 1 inch standard. And you just come in here and we measure this just like we would if we were measuring it. We want to make sure that it reads exactly 0. And it does. So that micrometer is in calibration. Again, if it was off, you would take it down to 0. You can use this little thimble lock right here to lock your spindle or spindle lock. And now you can use the wrench and again adjust that. Got it locked. There we go. And you go up to the larger ones. Again, you have different standards. This is a 2 inch standard. This is a 2 to 3 inch micrometer. I'll bring this down to 0 and measure it. There we go. Right on the money. Another maintenance thing you can do to micrometers from time to time is you can lubricate these to make them work a little bit better. So what you're looking at here, this is a 0 to 1 inch Brown and Sharp micrometer. This was actually a gift to me from one of my viewers on my channel that took an old one and repainted it. In this case, he painted it up red. He wanted to be a little bit different. And there's nothing wrong with this micrometer, but when I got it, I noticed that this barrel on this is just a little bit stiff. It's a little bit stiffer for my liking. So if that's the case, don't be afraid to take one of these things apart. And you just basically pull it all the way out. Okay. You can actually see the thread in there. That 40 pitch thread, and I've just got some lightweight tool oil here, and I'm just going to put a little drop of oil down here, not much, just a little bit. Starrett makes a really good tool oil that you can purchase that I really like using on my fine measurement tools. There we go, and we'll screw it back in, and just that little bit of oil, I can already tell there's a difference in how this micrometer is working. If you do use an oil, if you don't have a Starrett oil, use a real lightweight machine oil for this. You don't want to get too much in there either, just enough to lubricate it. So there you go, guys. A basic training on how to use and care for your micrometers, calibration and everything included. It's not that difficult. My advice to you, if you're just getting started using micrometers and just want to get good at it, get out and just start measuring things in the shop. Get a pen and paper, write it down. It's not very difficult. It's fairly easy to go through. But with some practice and with a little bit of experience, you can quickly make very accurate measurements down to 1,000th or even 10,000th of an inch using a good quality micrometer. Thanks for watching.